Good day, good friends. On this Friday morning, September 5, welcome to this week's Reporters Roundtable on the Bill Press Pod, where we look back at the big news of the week with three of Washington's top political reporters. Well, Congress came back to town with two blockbuster news events on the Hill. A fiery hearing yesterday where HHS Secretary RFK Jr. was peppered with hostile questions about his position on vaccines, mainly from Republican senators who voted to confirm it just a couple of months ago. And the day before, an emotional news conference where victims of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring told their stories, some for the first time, and called on Congress to vote to release all the Epstein files, which Speaker Johnson and the White House still resist. In other news, some National Guard members assigned to Washington said they're tired of doing garden work and just want to go home. And the legality of Trump's firing a Fed board member, cutting university research funds, sending troops into city streets, and imposing tariffs on imports without congressional approval, all are headed to the Supreme Court. Breaking news this morning, say goodbye to the Department of Defense and hello to the Department of War. Whoa, never a dull moment in Trump, too. So let's check in with today's panel. Jeff Dufour, editor-in-chief of the National Journal. Good to have you back, Jeff. Good morning.
Thanks, Bill. Good morning.
Arthur Delaney, senior political reporter for HuffPost covering Congress and the economy. Hi, Arthur.
Hello.
And Amanda Becker back with us, Washington correspondent for 19th News. Hello, Amanda.
Hello, great to be here.
And let's start in with just a couple of minutes ago, the Department of Labor released its jobs report. This one especially eagerly awaited because it's the first one since Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics after being unhappy with her report on the July jobs report. Now the report for August is out. Arthur Delaney covering Congress and the economy. How good is this jobs report?
It's a bad jobs report. The economy added 22,000 jobs.
Whoa.
That's less than expected and just a small number. And they were all in healthcare, while the rest of industries shed jobs. You want job growth just to keep up with population growth. But one of the confounding factors of the Trump economy is that a lot of people are getting yanked out of it and deported. Still, this is not a good one, and it's just bad news for the entire Trump economic agenda.
So, Jeff, who does he fire now?
I'm not sure who's left. The deputy undersecretary of the labor statistics. Do they now get the axe? I mean, I thought this was the whole point, that now the jobs reports were going to be sparkling.
Well, they have an acting person who took over for the woman who was sacked, the statistician.
Right, because
Lisa.
there's not a formal permanent replacement confirmed yet.
Right, and that will take time, and it's a sketchy one. So we still have people with integrity in charge of that agency.
I think the New York Times headline was this morning was the numbers will still be good for now.
Considered accurate for now, right? Yeah. Well, clearly, Amanda, this does this is certainly going to cause some comment about the strength of the Trump economy and the impact of the tariffs, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, look, he ran on two things, right? The economy and economics and improving that for American families, and his immigration agenda. Now, his immigration agenda, to a certain extent, is being stymied in the federal courts on a variety of fronts, and so that leaves him with the economy. And if that starts to flounder as well, either whether it's related to the tariffs or not, that is politically bad news.
So the other breaking news this morning, before we get to the other things we mentioned, that at 2 o'clock this afternoon, the president's going to sign an executive order changing the name of the Department of Defense, which has been there since 1949, to the Department of War. Jeff, so what's the big deal? It's just a name change, right?
Well, we are making we're making Henry Stimson great again. He was the Secretary of War during World War II. I guess they want to draw a bright line from Henry Stimson to the current secretary.
Pete Hegseth. Right?
Good luck. Good luck. But there's a couple interesting points about this. Number one, Congress has to do this officially. So the administration apparently is saying that this is a less formal secondary title, but they are going to instruct all the other departments to use it.
Mhm.
And I'm already hearing grumblings from the White House Correspondent Association. They are expecting this to be the next Gulf of America, where as soon as media
Mhm.
outlets don't refer to it as the Department of War, they'll get blackballed.
Mhm. Right. And Arthur, as Jeff pointed out, this is Congress. All the other change, there have been two or three changes, right, over time. It started out, I just did a little research yesterday, as the Department of War under George Washington, 1789. Then it changed its name once and then again. But Congress has done it every time, and Congress is supposed to be the one that does this. Is this going to be one more case where Congress just lets the president take powers away from it and not say anything?
Of course. Um, but
There
I
you
would like
go.
to say a Department of War is a better name. That's what that's why it exists. War is what it's for, and defense is a euphemism. We're not defending ourselves against anything. We're attacking stuff. Especially the Trump administration is
Uh,
launching little wars all the time. So it's like not legal and it's an usurpation of congressional authority. But I personally find the name less euphemistic, and that's good in just strictly terms of communications. But the whole thing is, of course, ridiculous and stupid. It's like the Cracker Barrel redo, only for the government.
yeah, and, Amanda, I guess it's too early yet, but, I mean, think of all the Department of Defense installations around the world, right? Just chiseling the name of defense off and putting in the name war. I mean, anybody think of the cost of this?
I'm sure no one has thought of the cost of this. Apparently, he's already been calling Hegseth the Secretary of War for a month or so now. And when you bring up changing signs and stuff, it makes me think of the acronym DOD. So I don't know what it will be now. Dow. We're going to change it all to Dow. Unclear on that front. I would think that they would need Congress to start doing that, but who knows these days?
Right. Arthur, back to what you said about the mission. I mean, it does really indicate that at least under this administration, right, the mission is making war, not being prepared to defend ourselves in case someone attacks us. I think that's a huge difference.
Yes, but that is what they do. I mean, they attack things. We're not being invaded by Trenda Aragua. We're not defending our homeland. We go abroad and intervene militarily for various reasons all around the world. And so calling it Department of War, just strictly from the meaning of words standpoint, I think it's fine. But legally and bureaucratically, it's like inefficient, it's illegal, it's ridiculous, and it's a PR distraction. We're all talking about this instead of many other things.
Well,
But
I would point out that we actually they said we were being invaded by Tren de Aragua because we blew one of their boats out of the Caribbean a few days ago, which is actually a much more serious issue because the Coast Guard is supposed to interdict boats like this and arrest the people on board if they expect smuggling. They're not just supposed to put a missile into the side of the boat without any due process.
Okay, I was gonna get to that later, but you raised it.
Sorry.
Let's get to it right now, right? You're right, Jeff. This is something that has been done by the Coast Guard, intercepting drug smugglers, right? They arrest them, they get the evidence, they have a trial, whatever. Uh, and it's drug smuggling's been going on forever. But Amanda, it's a peacetime problem, but Donald Trump is saying we're gonna solve it as a military problem with a war and bomb them.
Yeah, bomb
You know,
first, ask questions later. I mean, we don't yet know exactly what and who was on that boat. There are reports that it was migrants and had, not and it was not about smuggling drugs. And so that raises even more legal questions. And I know we're going to get to some of the legal issues this administration is encountering later, but
It's
just
hard to keep track of.
add that to the list of things that I expect to see related challenges crop up in court.
Yeah, right. This is, Arthur, new territory, right? Think of all the drugs that are smuggling in from Mexico or kind of wherever, right? So this is a new mission of the United States military.
Right, and it's we've launched strikes on supposed terrorist targets lots of times, but they were at least connected to the terror groups that were targeted and
Right.
authorizations for use of military force in response to September 11th. And those connections were perhaps tangential and arguable, and this is not. This is strictly a group that Trump has falsely claimed is waging irregular warfare against the United States, and that whole concept is itself tied up in court. And so I would say this is very new and unsettling. They haven't said, they're just saying, take our word for it. We killed 11 people who were bringing drugs to the United States. They said the drugs were actually going to Trinidad, I think, at one point, and then had to get their story straight. I'm talking about Rubio and the president and the Defense Department. And there's no evidence for it. They put a video out. You can't see that there's drugs. You can't see that there's 11 people in the boat. You, of course, can't see where it's going. So it's just them showing that they will blow stuff up. The military will launch strikes on targets wherever they want for this imaginary war that they say is being waged against us, but we know is not.
Right.
And
right.
if this, Arthur, is the pretext that we can take out drug smugglers with missiles and bombs and whatever else, remember that Trump has already explicitly said that he would consider bombing Mexican drug cartels over the border,
Right.
with or without Mexico's permission.
Yeah. And I saw him yesterday say that he, speaking of the president, said, I know who was on that boat and I know what was in that boat. Okay, so
You just got to take his word for it.
I got to take his word for it. Exactly. All right, let's move on to one of the big events of the week. Yesterday, quite a hearing, 3 hours long, the Senate Finance Committee. Jeff, I got to say, if a Republican member of the cabinet comes before a Republican-led Senate committee, this is not the reception you might expect, right? That Bobby Kennedy received yesterday.
No, we knew what the Democratic response was going to be. In fact, at 5 o'clock in the morning before the hearing, a bunch of Democratic senators released a big report on why Kennedy is unqualified and should be jettisoned. But so we knew that going in. The real drama came around. I think two people, John Barrasso and Bill Cassidy. Bill Cassidy, of course, cast one of the deciding votes in favor of Kennedy, and he had a kind of a nice, interesting gotcha moment. He asked Kennedy, does the president deserve credit for Operation Warp Speed and maybe getting the Nobel Prize for it? And Kennedy said, well, of course he does. So then he follows up by saying, well, you just told Senator Bennett that the vaccine costs more lives than COVID itself. So how do those two things square? And Kennedy, of course, just stammered. He didn't really have an answer.
Yeah. Jeff, let me interrupt you. I want to play that clip, okay?
Yeah,
and then you can continue your comment about it. So here is Senator Cassidy, again, first getting Kennedy to join him in buttering up the president and then jumping in.
Mr. Secretary, do you agree with me that the president deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed?
Yeah, absolutely, Senator.
So let me ask you, but you just told Senator Bennett that the COVID vaccine killed more people than COVID.
Wait,
that was a statement.
I did not say that, Senator. I just want to make clear, I did not say that.
We'll check the record. That's a question of fact.
I did not say that. It's become kind of a classic Kennedy trick, isn't it? Right? denying things he's clearly said before.
Right. And maybe he doesn't remember. I don't
Or
know.
maybe or maybe he used slightly different words, because I believe he said it was the deadliest vaccine ever, but maybe, believes he has plausible deniability by it not being an exact quote read back to him. But he has certainly broken close to every promise he made Senator Cassidy during his confirmation hearings.
Arthur, I know you've talked to these senators all the time. Is there some buyer's remorse, and will any of them say so publicly?
They won't say so. I mean, there is obviously buyer's remorse for Bill Cassidy. We knew that already, and when we're just watching him twist as his the secretary's commitments to him are broken, and he complains in the hearing. But they already voted for him, so what impact his regret can have is not clear to me. The Barrasso coming out and
Hmm.
saying he's concerned was the surprise, because Barrasso is the second ranking Republican and a pretty hard partisan, and so it's a real testament to a slight loss of control that Trump has over the Senate. But Kennedy's still safe, I think, and Republicans are not going to buck the president over this. So it's kind of I think an enclosed story that I don't know where it goes from here.
Right.
But it's something you could see coming a mile away from the minute that Trump said he'd nominate this guy. We knew he'd get confirmed, and we knew these senators would have regrets,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't do anything about it.
Jeff, I remember when I was covering the White House, every time we heard the White press secretary said that the president had complete confidence in a cabinet secretary, that usually meant they were going to be out the door in a week, right?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because Trump was asked about this last
I
night. He
know.
said
Yeah.
he said, quote, "I like that he's different," meaning Kennedy. "We need different perspectives." But I also wanted to highlight something that Trump posted on Truth Social earlier in the week. It was a really long, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he said, quote, "It's very important that drug companies justify the success of their various COVID drugs. Many people think they're a miracle that saved millions of lives. Others disagree. With CDC being ripped apart over the question, I want the answer and I want it now." So I have
Mhm.
two questions. Per Cassidy's question, if he does see this data that shows that the vaccines were successful, wouldn't he then have to fire Kennedy?
Mhm.
Uh, because this was his initiative to begin with. And number two, does he not know that he is in charge of the government? He can get this data anytime he wants it. He could ask it to be delivered to his desk in an hour.
Amanda, something that was just part of reference a little while ago. The question I always have is, I would say that one of the best things that Donald Trump did, maybe the best thing of his first term, was Operation Warp Speed, getting that COVID vaccine out there fast, and it saved millions of lives, probably, right? He can't brag about it because Kennedy said it was a bad vaccine and people died because of it. So, I mean, this is like taking away Trump's bragging rights over one of the best things he did, and he seems to accept it,
On
right?
its face, yes. Although I would say that this is, not a president who has ever, um, let's just say, contradictions have not stopped him from bragging about things before. But I do think it gets increasingly hard the longer that Kennedy is out there and the longer that he's, the secretary and having these hearings. And, yesterday they were raising really real questions about people already struggling to access this vaccine in some states, and that they're hearing that from their constituents. And so this does just become a more muddled mess the farther into it they go. And the vaccine panel is slated to meet later this month. And he's, of course, ousted all of the previous people and put in his own people, which is another thing he said he would not do. And so this is just going to stay in the news for weeks.
Yeah, indeed. And Jeffrey Epstein is going to stay in the news for weeks, thanks in part to a big news conference Wednesday on the Hill. Let's talk about that and other news of the week after a quick break here on the Reporters Roundtable today. And then we'll be back and continue our conversation with Jeff Dufour from National Journal, Arthur Delaney from HuffPost, and Amanda Becker from 19th News. And today's Reporters Roundtable here on the Bill Press Pod brought to you by the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, the great members of the UFCW under President Milton Jones. They're union members that we encounter probably most often in our daily lives. They serve us at the great retail stores like Macy's and Nordstrom's, great grocery chains like Ralph's and Safeway. Uh, they're the ones who staff our meat and poultry processing plants, chemical plants, cannabis plants, serving America every day. We thank them for their great work. Thank them for their longtime support of progressive broadcasting. And check out their website at ufcw.org to find out more about all the activities that they're involved in, members of the UFCW. And we're back on today's Reporters Roundtable. Say hello again to Amanda Becker from 19th News, Arthur Delaney from HuffPost, and Jeff Dufour from the National Journal. It was an emotional news conference on right in front of the steps of the United States Capitol on Wednesday, as 9 survivors of the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking ring told their stories. The question is, Arthur, did it change any votes?
It did not. I was at this press conference, and Thomas Massie, the Republican who's leading this effort to write a law that forces the Epstein files into the public view, was basically using the presser to beg his fellow Republicans to sign on. And so far, he's only got 3: Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, and Lauren Boebert, which is interesting.
Hmm.
And one Democrat, Jamie Raskin, told me that this it shows the importance of having women in politics and political leadership. But the White House is lobbying hard against any Republicans who might think of signing on to this, and Speaker Johnson is giving them an exit ramp by having them vote for a toothless resolution that supports the ongoing work of the Oversight Committee, which is putting out some Epstein files that are curated by the Justice Department. So Massey's 2 votes short. He needs 2 signatures short, I mean, on
Hmm.
his discharge petition to force this vote. If they don't get any Republicans, there will be vacant Democratic seats filled in the next couple months that could supply those 2 signatures. And I think that's why he has said he knows he'll get the numbers that he needs for this to happen. So it's sort of stuck right now, but I think it will get unstuck this year.
Right. I was not there. I watched the news conference on television. I have to say, it was hard to watch. The stories were so compelling. Here is one of the victims, Shanti Davies, who talks about her experience. I'm not sure she was one of those speaking for the first time, but very powerful testimony. Here she is.
The truth is, Epstein had a free pass. He bragged about his powerful friends, including our current president, Donald Trump. It was his biggest brag, actually. And while what I endured will haunt me forever, I live every day with PTSD. I live as a mother trying to raise my child while distrusting a world that has betrayed me. This kind of trauma never leaves you.
Amanda, all these women were asking was release the files, right? Just release all the files and let everybody see who's in it. Doesn't matter, as some of them said, we're Republicans, we're Democrats. This is not a political thing. Just release all the files. Why is the White House resisting so much? And Speaker Johnson?
Well, Speaker Johnson is trying to paint this as a privacy concern for the survivors, who are the ones, of course, calling for it to be released. And they're
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
you can redact survivor names. The names that are important to get out there are not the survivors and the victims. It is the abusers. And I think, we won't know exactly why the White House doesn't want it out unless it comes out and we get to see what's in there, because it's hard to say without knowing what's in these files, which is why everybody wants them out, which is why they previously promised that they would put them out. But Johnson is kind of, having this circular argument that he's doing this for the survivors in terms of, not releasing the files when the survivors are the ones, as we just heard, saying we want it out there.
Jeff, I remember we talked about this when Congress broke for the recess, and I remember asking you, this means when they come back, the Epstein issue will have disappeared forever, and we won't be talking about it anymore. That strategy Didn't really work, did it?
Yes, precisely. No one's talking about it.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
I thought one of the most telling quotes I saw was the Bulwark got the White House on the record saying that any Republican who signed on to Massey's uh, resolution, it would be viewed as a hostile act to the administration. Now, why would it be viewed as a hostile act unless somehow the material in there would harm the administration? The White House is certainly behaving like there is a consciousness of guilt there. Uh, I have no particular knowledge of it, uh, but why the lack of sunlight? It's tough to say. Um, there's another possibility that Massey had floated. He said that uh, some of the if the survivors wanted to step up and name names, they could potentially be sued. But Massey floated that he and Marjorie Taylor Greene could go to the House of Representatives to the floor and name names there under the Constitution's speech and debate clause, which would protect them. That would really be something to see.
Indeed. In fact, Arthur, you mentioned the three women, right? And Marjorie Taylor Greene was actually at the news conference, standing alongside of Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey, and then Lauren Boebert, and then Nancy Mace. All three of them have been big supporters of Donald Trump, and yet they're standing they're they're standing against him on this issue, and it looks like not going to break. Right? Does that surprise you?
It's yes, it is surprising. It just shows the cross current here with this issue. It is the political right that is making this a huge thing,
Mm-hmm.
because of their past obsession with this particular conspiracy theory that you take all the true things about Epstein and his association with rich and famous people, and then add in this idea that there is a client list that is like the key to unlocking a broader QAnon type pedophile ring, and revealing this will cause people, powerful people, to finally be charged with crimes. And I think the Justice Department is probably right that there is no actual like Rosetta Stone type client list, and that there's no more prosecutorial, there's no more crimes for them to prosecute related to this. But the fact is, Trump was friends with the guy, and Trump's name reportedly is in these files repeatedly, and it's just embarrassing. Even though it's likely that Trump did not participate in the massage routine that Epstein apparently had with trafficking some of these girls to friends of his. It's just a bad story because there's all these pictures of Trump with Epstein, and his name is, we already know his name's in the flight logs and probably elsewhere in these documents.
Right. Yeah, we know his. We know at least we've heard that his name is all over these files because Elon Musk said so. Right.
Yes, and it's been reported.
Yeah.
Also, the Justice Department sent hundreds of people poring over these, in part to flag famous names, including Trump's, and they told him that he's in there,
Right.
which doesn't mean he committed a crime, but that sucks for you. That's a terrible guy. Why were you friends with him? I
It's
think the pictures themselves are damning enough, but it's a bad story for the White House because of Trump's association with Epstein, which is already something that we know for sure.
right. All right. So here we go. All four of us live in occupied Washington. I've been calling it. I don't know whether the deadline has passed yet, but it soon will pass. Jeff, are the National Guard going to pack up and leave Washington, or are we going to be a militarily occupied city for some time? And where do they go next?
Um, it seems like they're going to have to leave relatively soon unless the administration really wants to go to the mat on this and force a court to force the National Guard out. It seems like Congress is not going to move to extend the 30 days that the president can deploy them. Uh, so the president would have to unilaterally try to extend it, and that gets into a real legal gray area. Given the track record of legal matters going against the Trump White House this week. Uh, I don't really like his chances there, but who's to say? He could always go and see who blinks first between he and the courts. But I would think that within a week or two, you're not going to see the National Guard. There's stories coming out about them being bored. They're doing litter pickup and gardening and whatever else. Administration likes to tout all the arrests they've made and the crime numbers down, but it's unclear how many of those arrests are thanks to the National Guard versus arrests that would have been made anyway.
Oh, the National Guard is not doing any crime fighting. The arrests that Trump can take credit for uh, are federal agents that he does control, and he can
Or
keep
ICE,
here.
right?
ICE,
I,
DEA.
I, ICE,
Yeah.
U.S. Marshals, FBI, and the mayor of Washington, Muriel Bowser, is happy to have them here because she wishes the police department had 500 more people anyway. It's the DC Police Department making the arrests, by the way, and these guys just typically are there as backup. Something I have observed several times in my neighborhood.
Right. And I must say, I ran into some National Guard members at a Haynes Point, West Potomac Park, last Saturday morning when I was out for my Saturday morning walk, and they were cutting the grass and picking up litter, and they were not happy with it. I talked to a couple of them about it. One, the question is also where next? The president has been talking about Chicago. Here is Governor J.B. Pritzker in one of many public statements. This was from the Minus Touch podcast saying, don't come here.
It's been reported that there are about 300 of those officers that are planning on coming in and doing what they did in Los Angeles, which is terrorize the neighborhoods and cause mayhem. They're hoping in the end, their plan is to cause enough mayhem on the ground that they'll have to call in troops to protect the ICE officials. And the question, I think, for all of us is, are we going to stand up and let it and push back, or are we just going to let it happen?
So, Amanda, Pritzker may, at least now, the White House is saying maybe they'll go to New Orleans next, right? Uh,
Yep.
so it looks like Pritzker may have forced their hand, right?
He may
It
have
scared
forced
them off.
another taco situation, which, of course, the acronym that they came up with that is Trump Boys Chickens Out. I mean, I was in Chicago last week on a reporting trip as kind of this was all coming to a head because initial reports were that they would be there on Labor Day, Monday.
Right.
Um, Not only has Pritzker, been very out in front talking about this and about how they're not welcome, about how he's not going to, just stand by. The mayor has said the same, Brandon Johnson. Down to like just people on the street were talking about it in Chicago, and talking about what they're doing to get ready if something like that happens in their city. So maybe they will look for an easier target. The mayor of New Orleans is already under indictment. Perhaps that is a situation that they can, manipulate more easily and guide more easily. But right now we don't know. And he's even said he doesn't know when he's going to do it, and he's not going to say, and he in that situation is President Trump, but that he's, thinking of Chicago, thinking of Baltimore, thinking of New Orleans.
That would be significant if he picks New Orleans because it would be the first red state that he's sent the National
Good point.
Guard
Right.
into. And a lot of folks have pointed out that a lot of the highest crime cities are large cities in red states: Memphis, New Orleans, etc.
Yeah, good point.
But
Good point.
I would say, though, the one thing that New Orleans has in common with the other cities is they all have black mayors.
Yes.
Yep. There you go. Okay, now we don't know. I don't know when the Supreme Court officially comes back, but when they do, man, they're going to be busy because, as been alluded to a couple of times in this conversation, there are a lot of issues where Donald Trump has been pushing the envelope in terms of presidential power that have been called into question by lower courts that have already ruled that some of the things he has done, questionable legality, including like we've been talking about, the deployment of troops, the firing of a board member of the Fed, using the Alien and Sedition Act to round up people and deport them to countries they never heard of or never came from, cutting off funding for scientific research at Harvard and other universities. and the list is longer than that, all of which are being appealed to the Supreme Court, saying, confirm that I've got the authority to do all of this. Jeff, uh, what can we expect of the Supreme Court? A blank check for Trump on all the above?
Well, I don't know, but it could shape up to be one of the most consequential terms we've seen in recent memory, at least as it pertains to the president's Article 2 powers. Um, we've definitely seen Justices Alito and Thomas, at the very least, seem willing to give the president some really broad discretion to determine things like when an emergency situation exists, uh, for which he can send in the National Guard, or when a government official could be fired for cause, like we're talking about Lisa Cook, or the woman at the FTC who was fired. The court case went against the administration there this week. Thomas and Alito are happy to say, look, the president has discretion to decide all those things, but I would look at Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Barrett as maybe finding a lot more middle ground on some of these things. So I think between now and June, you're going to see a lot more clarity in terms of what Article 2 powers the president has. If everything goes Trump's way, it's really a shift in the constitutional order.
Arthur, tariffs I should have added to this list, right? Which is constitutionally the job of the Congress.
Right. Trump does have power on tariffs, but he went outside of where Congress had specifically ceded it to him because remember, the worldwide reciprocal tariffs were based on this idea that our trade deficits, our consumption of cheap TVs and apparel is a national emergency, which is very ridiculous. And he cited a law that doesn't give the president the power to tariff. It doesn't have the word tariffs in it. So he could lose on that. I believe that the Supreme Court, that Chief Justice John Roberts is essentially a politician, and he conserves his political capital. And every big decision, he looks for ways to have it both ways. For instance, the big Obamacare ruling, where he upheld Obamacare but took away parts of it, such as the tax on the individual mandate penalty. And he's gonna give Trump some L's, and he's not done that yet for the most part. I believe because he's looking for the big cases where it's really clear that he has to.
And Amanda, I think the moment that everybody is dreading is when the Supreme Court does rule, pick any of the above, right? And they rule against the president and say, no, you do not have that power under the Constitution. And then Trump defies the court, which he may not do, but he could also do. And what happens then? Who enforces the
What
law?
does happen then? We don't know. We've never been in that situation before in modern history, at least, and so that really is the question. Now, I would say that the court doesn't have to take any of those cases. I think that they probably will, but they don't have to, and so that would be one way for them to avoid that situation altogether, if it's something that some of the justices are wanting to avoid.
Yeah, good point. But we haven't seen them, ducking those cases yet. But that definitely is a way out for them, right?
But they have taken interim steps of kind of rulings that are limited, that are interim, that sort of thing. So I do think that shows some reluctance to kind of reach this point where the line is drawn in the sand and we see if the president steps over it.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, boy, what a week it's been, and what a great job wrapping it up, Amanda Becker, Jeff Dufour, and Arthur Delaney. Before you go, we always ask, what's one story that caught your attention this week? We call it our favorite story of the week. Amanda indicated maybe it's time to say what was your least favorite story of the week.
I found one.
Favorite or unfavorite story? What's the one that just stopped you in your tracks for a while? All right, Amanda, go.
Okay, so I realized that I had really enjoyed this story after we were emailing about it, and it is from the New Yorker this week. The title is "Why Are Kids So Funny?" The emergence of humor so early in life suggests something important about human nature. I've been spending a lot of time with my nieces who just turned 3 and 5, and I have realized that they're hilarious. So I've never laughed so hard as when I spend time with them. So I really enjoyed this story because little kids are really funny. And it was really interesting to kind of learn about what that means about how our personalities develop and kind of what makes us human.
Aha! This week's New Yorker. Haven't gone through it yet, but that sounds like a fun story. Yeah, and kids are funny, as all of us know, right?
I mean, I had tears coming out of my eyes the other day with my
Oh,
nieces.
that's
I was
good.
laughing so hard.
Yeah. Arthur, what caught your attention this week?
My colleague SV Date at
Oh,
HuffPost had a
yeah.
story up on Saturday titled "Maybe Rex Tillerson Was Right. Maybe Donald Trump really is just a moron." And listen, moron is an insult, right? It's a subjective term, but a lot of people who've been close to Trump have said he's a stupid guy, while acknowledging he's got special talents for cruelty, sensing weakness, instilling fear. Uh, and so take seriously the possibility that he lacks critical thinking skills, that he's unwilling to understand things. I think this is a good read. Take, for example, I mean, he uses as his muse, my colleague SV Date does, Trump's letting billions of gallons of water out of these reservoirs in California early this year because there had been those wildfires in Los Angeles, and Trump imagines that it's because they weren't using this available water, and just billions of gallons of water were dumped in a valley nowhere near Los Angeles. It did not help Los Angeles. It could have flooded this valley and caused major damage and death. But the Army Corps of Engineers didn't follow the order. They let out half as much as they were told to in a potentially life-saving refusal to follow orders that could have been a crime. So that was scary, and that's what we're dealing with here.
Good for SV Date. Good, damn good reporter, White House reporter. Jeff, your turn. Favorite story of the week?
It appears that Nancy Mace may not be returning to Congress because she's running for governor of South Carolina. Fortunately, Madison Cawthorn may be returning.
Yes.
I am delighted about this just for the entertainment value. He wants to run for Byron Donalds' seat from Florida. Remember, Cawthorn came from Western North Carolina in his one term. Just to review, the Charlotte Observer has a helpful recap on Cawthorn's first term. Fascination with Adolf Hitler on his social media accounts. Married and divorced in less than a year, right after he took office. Caught at the Asheville airport with a gun in his carry-on bag, and then finally, and most deliciously in terms of his return to Congress, he accused unnamed members of Congress of having orgies and snorting bumps of cocaine, drawing ire from the rest of his colleagues.
So come back,
So
Madison, right?
please come back, Madison. Our political culture desperately needs you.
And he was here this week. I saw him and talked
Oh,
to him at the Capitol.
He was there on the day of the Epstein survivor presser.
Yes.
oh
Yes,
Yes.
no.
I saw him and said, "What's up, bro?" And he said, "What's up?"
There you go. Well, I just want to take my time for a favorite story. It's not a favorite story, but I want to take the time to salute one of the greatest people that I ever met and worked with, and that is Mark Knoller, a longtime CBS White House reporter covering the White House for CBS Radio for more than 40 years, actually. And he was such a great guy. And Mark became known for being the statistician basically of the White House press corps. He realized once he was working on the story and he tried to find out a fact about I don't know how many times the president had gone to Brussels or something, and the White House couldn't tell him, and so he decided he was going to keep the facts and the records for everything the president did, and he did so, and he shared that with all of us in the press corps. He was on my show, radio TV show, many times. An example of that, the New York Times and his obit, Mark said, one day, one reporter turned to him and said, "Mark, when was President Obama's last full news conference?" And without even citing his notes or anything, Mark said, "March 6, 2022. It was 44 minutes long. It was in the briefing room." That's the kind of source that you want, right? All of us want Mark Knoller. He was a great, great guy. And I must say, Arthur, that the one who seems to have picked up that public service, if you will, as part of the press corps is HuffPost's S.V. Date, who
Yeah,
did
he counts the golf outings and the vacation
exactly.
days. Yeah.
He reported this year that President Trump has played golf 66 days out of 225 days of his presidency, which amounts for 29.3% of his time as president since January 20. So
He couldn't win all those club championships if he didn't practice that much, Bill.
It's important to his health. Honestly, let him golf.
Yeah, exactly. At any rate, Mark Knoller, we miss you. We love you. It was great working with you. And he died this week at the age of 73, a young 73. And with that, thank you so much, panelists, Amanda Becker, Jeff Dufour, Arthur Delaney. Thank you so much for being with us again. Thanks to all of you, good friends, for joining us. Have a great weekend, and then come back and see us on Tuesday. Very interesting conversation. I'm going to be talking with Dr. John Gartner, who is a leading psychologist, a former professor at Johns Hopkins Medical School, who this week said that he detects serious signs of cognitive decline in President Trump, and suggests it might even be time for the cabinet to consider the 25th Amendment. Whoa, that's a pretty controversial statement. We'll talk to Dr. John Gartner about it on Tuesday. We'll see you then. Again, in the meantime, have a good weekend. Come back and see us Tuesday for the next edition of the Bill Press Pod.